Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Swales. Mr. Paul Burstow.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hancock, and it's a pleasure, as you say, to serve under your chairmanship and the coincidence of speaker and respondent in this debate. I certainly congratulate my honourable friend and the other honourable members who contributed their comments in this debate, and for him for securing it. It isn't the first time the House has debated these matters. My honourable friend, the member for Mid-Poole and North Dorset, has raised these issues, and others besides, including myself, in my time in opposition as well. And for my own part, I certainly have found the support and encouragement I have from my own local ME support group and what they have taught me as being an invaluable part of how an MP gets an insight into a condition they may not personally suffer from. Now, I realise that this is a difficult and controversial subject, and I can understand why feelings really do run very high, and I certainly appreciate the difficult and desperate struggles that people face often to achieve clinical recognition and the relief from the condition, and the sense of hope that there is a direction of travel which is about understanding the underlying causes and eventually getting to a cure. What I can say in respect of my honourable friend's comments towards the end of his remarks about benefits is that I will make sure those comments are passed to ministerial colleagues in the Department of Work and Pensions. They're either above my pay grade or certainly outside it, so I won't address that, although I think he makes some important points. The basic challenge is that we don't know with any confidence what causes the distressing symptoms, indeed the condition itself, that my honourable friend has so clearly described. And that's why he's absolutely right, and indeed why the honourable member for Stockton South has also rightly highlighted the need for research in this area. Now, on his point about defining the condition, the fact is that until we have a strong clinical evidence base, we have to keep an open mind about whether this is one condition or a number of conditions with similar symptoms, but with different causes. And so the department does and will continue for the time being to follow the World Health Organization Convention in how we describe and refer to this, and that is to call it CFS/ME. That's the World Health Organization definition. It's not a specific term that the Department of Health has alighted upon and no one else uses. And it's important that that is understood. Now, on our present understanding, this definition best captures the spectrum of symptoms and effects that characterise this illness. As yet, there is no cure or indeed any consistently effective treatment for the condition. And as my honourable friend has rightly said, we don't even have a standard diagnostic test to confirm the condition, with diagnosis only possible by excluding other illnesses with similar symptoms. There is, however, strong international consensus that CFS-ME is a chronic and disabling neurological illness. And I want to stress that this is a neurological illness. It's not a mental health problem, as I know that does cause great concern and indeed arguably offence for many of the sufferers who campaigned vociferously against that suggestion. Although perhaps I can say, in passing, that the strength of many people's reaction to that label is perhaps says a lot about the stigma that still attaches to mental illness itself, and perhaps the attitudes of health professionals towards it. And these are two things that we are attempting to tackle in the mental health strategy that the government has published today. But whilst CFS-ME doesn't have a psychological foundation, that doesn't mean that there are not lessons and insights that we can gain from cognitive behavioural therapy, and that it shouldn't be used as part, where appropriate, of a treatment plan. And as they are for many other long-term health conditions, they are used here too. Now, I know the NICE guideline, which the honourable member has referred to, does include counselling and graded exercise as possible treatment options, and I emphasise that, possible and guideline. Neither of these things are mandated, and it is perfectly possible and should be the nature of the conversation between the clinician and the individual about the appropriate personalised approach to their situation. But these guidelines really are about helping a person to manage their symptoms as much as possible. And in lieu of any clinical cure, it is about social recovery. It's about helping people to manage their symptoms, to be clear about their own goals and how they define their own recovery, rather than prescribing simply a clinical treatment. Now, we know that the treatment in the guidelines helps some patients, but as the honourable gentleman has rightly said, for many it doesn't help at all, and for some they find it offensive. Now, the obvious point, and the one that I'll return to in a moment, is that the doctor needs to work with the patient to find the most appropriate way forward. And that's why personalisation is so much at the heart of our approach to long-term conditions in general, and is clearly critical in this regard too. Now, research has been talked about, and with no cure, research is naturally a source of hope for those with the condition. And my honourable friend has made a very powerful and compelling case for further investment in this area. However, it isn't as simple as the government just saying, we will the end, but we're not clear about the means when it comes to research. It's not a case simply of allocating a research pot to a specific disease type, because down that road lies poor research and not discovery and real change. So what we are doing is protecting the health research budgets overall, and we took that decision from the centre. The Chancellor in the budget spending review made that decision. But the decisions on how this money is allocated do and rightly should remain with the Medical Research Council and not for a minister sitting behind a desk in Whitehall. And that has to be the case with other funding bodies too. Now, the MRC has nominated CFSME as a strategic priority area for several years, and indeed the Council has now set up an expert group specifically to focus on this condition. People actually focusing on this in a way that perhaps has not happened before. Now, the group is made up of leading academics from across the country, as well as representatives from several of the organisations with a direct experience and interest in the condition. And all of them are working together to improve the capacity and opportunities for research in this area. Now, the Honourable Friend has made reference to what I think he has acknowledged as good news, that the MRC is making up to 1.5 million available to support research into the causes of CFS-ME, and that is to be welcomed. The decision on funding will continue to be made purely on the basis of the quality of the research funding received. But I think what it does do, and it's absolutely critical in any area where we need more research to take place, is it sends a very clear signal that the money is there, that there is a willingness to commit funds to research. And now the challenge, the gauntlet if you like, is thrown down to the research community to rise to that challenge, to make sure that there are enough bids of sufficient quality to draw down that funding. So I can tell my honourable friend that this new funding and the funding call that underpins it will focus on 6 priority areas identified by the expert group: autonomic dysfunction, cognitive symptoms, fatigue, immune problems and pain management, and sleep disorders. And I will make sure that the MRC and other research bodies have sight of the debate and the additional points that have been made about biomedical research, so that that is taken into account by the expert groups as well.